You've been asking for it for months at this point, and I think it's finally time for me to start sharing with you what I think are the best tag synergy teams in DC Dark Legion. This is probably not going to be a monthly update, but it's going to be controlled by how many new champions are added into the meta. And obviously, it is going to lag a little bit behind what we're seeing and what's coming out. You know, we just got Martian Manhunter into the game. We just got Nightwing. We got Arsenal. And we're going to be getting Starfire soon. So we'll probably start trying to incorporate some sort of an Outsiders build or a hybrid build with that team. I think there are potentials that could be used, that the Outsiders could be used with Titans or Justice League. So definitely the biggest struggle with putting together this list is it's kind of really difficult to make something in real time for these tag synergies. It takes a little bit of time for us to establish a meta before we can look back and say, oh yeah, those teams are the ones that you should probably be using. Unfortunately, that's kind of the way things work. So for a lot of you, you're going to be looking at this and thinking, I really wish I had this when I was trying to build those teams. But, you know, when we're sitting on the bleeding edge of very new game, it's just kind of difficult. And so that's kind of where we're at this point. I do hope that this will be beneficial to you as you start looking at your 3v3 rosters and how you want to set up your teams for things like Guardian Challenge and some of the other strategy events that require ship combat. I do want to point out the biggest elephant in the room here, and one of the reasons that I've been a bit hesitant to put this guide out, and that is these are just kind of basic recommendations for you. In a lot of cases, you're going to be going into things like Combat Cycle, and you're going to be running Justice League Dark, but you'll sub out Wonder Woman and you'll sub in something like Flash, which is what I've been using for Murder Machine, and it's been a pretty crazy combo. I'll actually show you some footage of that at the end of this video. You know, you're gonna deal with situations like for this Justice League team that I mentioned here. Not everyone is going to have Green Lantern. In fact, most of you won't. So you're going to have to figure out ways to sort of change that team around what you do have. But I do think that these recommendations are going to be slightly better than what you're getting from the collection in game that's recommending you for teams. So I did try to stack rank these teams based on what I think are probably the better setups or the easier to attain setups. But at the same time, some of these are kind of tied with each other. We'll talk about that as we go through. But the first setup is going to be Justice League Dark. I think Justice League Dark, pound for pound, is the best team in the game if you're trying to get a 5-tag synergy. And that's really because there are only 5 champions that are available, and all 5 of them are incredibly useful. This team, you're going to have 2 limited mythic champions, and they do come right next to each other in the bleed. So it is going to be quite difficult for non-spenders and light spenders to build this team. But if you're able to get your Zatanna to 0 stars, or you maybe get those first 5 stars on her, and then you have a few ambles left over to pull for Constantine for literally a full month, I think you can definitely do some decent work with this team and try to get it built up. You're going to be able to access Raven from the Meta Brawl shop, and then, you know, I think Dr. Fate is going to be the most difficult to obtain for a non-spender, but just getting him at 0 stars is going to be impactful for you. And you can get him with those mythic shard selectors, which are a little bit harder to get now, but you can definitely get enough of them from the Darkest Timeline that you'll be able to at least get him unlocked. So definitely my favorite team in the game. I was angling towards Justice League Dark from the very beginning because I loved Dr. Fate. So can't recommend this highly enough. You're going to get the 5-tag synergy for Justice League Dark. You're also going to get the 4 energy wielder synergy. So you're going to have a decent amount of survivability with this team comp, as well as a lot of spiritual amp. The next team on the list is fairly easy to build for non-spenders. You may have some difficulty with Superman. You know, we've been talking a lot in the community about the idea that non-spenders probably should consider skipping Justice League and skipping Superman at least and going for Joker, which is why I have a decent emphasis on the Arkham's Most Wanted and Legion of Doom champions here in this guide. But I do think that if you're just really wanting to go after Justice League, or you're willing to spend a little bit to get some extra anvils, you definitely should be drawing Superman as high as you can get him, at least getting him to 3 blue stars, but really trying to push towards purple if you can, because he's really the engine for this team. So the way I've thought about this team composition is you want to have your Shazam for some of that upfront tanking and survivability, especially having that revive and taunt. We've got our Aquaman, who is going to be doing a lot of control. We're not adding Aquaman to this lineup for damage dealing. He probably should not be a firepower, but we're definitely adding him to get that additional metahuman synergy, and then also so that he can control the battlefield and kind of round everyone up so that Superman can continue to do his ult. And that's also the reason why we added Flash here, because Flash is going to allow Superman to cycle his ult very quickly, and he's going to be able to DPS down one enemy at a time. And then obviously we've added Green Lantern here for those who are going to spend. I've also indicated that he is a huge cash cow, or cash prize, I should say, for people who spend in the game. But he is an incredible healer, and he's going to get you that 5th Justice League tag synergy. And I mentioned there's going to be some modularity to these team comps. So obviously, if you don't have Shazam well built, you can throw in Wonder Woman. If you don't have Green Lantern, unfortunately, you'll lose the 5 tag synergy, but you can throw in your Mira or Ivy or whoever else. I do think that if you're running Superman, having Flash is quite important. So definitely something that you want to keep in mind there. You are going to be able to get up to 5 Justice League tag synergy and 4 on the metahuman, which is going to give you a ton of additional attack. The next teams, I'll kind of lump them as like a 3A and 3B, because I do think they go hand in hand. And we're going to talk about this last team on the list as well in a second. But I do think that the 5 tag synergy Arkham's Most Wanted team is quite useful, and it's not too difficult to build. You know, you're going to have 2 limited mythic champions here in Joker and Scarecrow, and they do come back to back. So this is another difficult decision that you have to make. You know, who you should invest in more, and obviously you should get as many stars on Joker as you can, but it is important to get Scarecrow up into the blue stars at a bare minimum for non-spenders. And you know, I have him at purple stars. I think he is really incredible. I think his kit really opens up there, but again, kind of tough to make that decision to invest more into Scarecrow. So nonetheless, I think it is easy to get both of those champions and start building this team out. And I've got Bane here. I've talked a little bit about Bane. I'm kind of up and down on where he ranks in our tier rankings, but he's a champion that's not too difficult to get. You can obtain his shards with Meta Brawl tokens, and I think that he's one of the most self-sustaining tanks in the game, so you don't need a ton of healing for him, and he's also just going to control that front line for you fairly well. Obviously, we have Ivy here. You see Ivy appears a lot in this graphic because I think that Ivy is probably the best healer in the game. She's definitely up there. And then, of course, we have Two-Face. Two-Face is probably the best damage dealer for the Arkham lineup outside of the Joker. And Two-Face is also going to augment the Joker's damage by using a couple of his debuffs. So Two-Face is a physical damage dealer, but he's going to help your spiritual damage dealers. So again, he's going to buff Scarecrow and Joker. And then I should also mention that Scarecrow has some nice mechanics to be able to buff spiritual damage as well. And he does that by the mental breakdown skill or debuff, which is going to reduce the enemy min. And that means that the enemy is going to basically be more susceptible to damage from spiritual damage dealers. So I think it's a really good team. You have the ability to get your 5 tag Arkham's Most Wanted tag synergy here, as well as the 3 tag Weapon Master. What that's going to do, why it's important for this team, is you're going to be trying to put a lot of debuffs on the enemy, and you need to have that effect accuracy up to 100%. So that you can land those debuffs. And then obviously the Weapon Master is going to give you additional attack. For our 3A, the Legion of Doom team, this one does require a significant investment. So it's really going to be more of I think, a spender lineup. At least I should say that spenders are going to enjoy the lineup a lot more than non-spenders and light spenders. But the Legion of Doom comp is going to rely on having your Lex Luthor, who is going to allow a ton of energy generation. You're going to be able to cycle your ultimates a lot faster. One nice thing about this lineup for non-spenders is you do have a little bit of optionality. So let's say that you weren't able to get Sinestro, you can throw in a Black Adam, for example. You know, if you didn't have Scarecrow, you decided to skip him so that you could get more shards of Deathstroke or Sinestro. Obviously, you can throw in Killer Croc. He's not a great champion. I'm just trying to give you some optionality for how you can build the team out. There are definitely some options where, you know, you can fill in a couple of gaps that you have. But I think that Legion of Doom is definitely one of the better tag synergy teams that you can get. And with this setup, you will be able to get the 4 tag Legion of Doom. Obviously, you can't get the 5th because there's not a healer unless you just go really all out DPS. But you'll also be able to get the Weapon Master buff, which is going to allow you to get a little bit of extra attack. And the last team before we talk about the bonus team here is Titans. And this Titans team, it's really kind of a Titans slash Bat family team. This team comp was really not possible until we got Nightwing. I have been a little bit low on Bat family. I mean, honestly, it's definitely a heavy investment team, but with the addition of Nightwing as a bleed limited champion, I think it makes it a little bit easier to build out this team comp. Obviously, you're going to be dealing with Robin, who is basically the only way you can obtain him is through Mythic Shard selectors and the daily deals. So he's definitely a pay to win champion. But if you can get him to at least, let's say, white stars, I think, you know, you can make this viable. You got Cyborg, who is immediately beneficial even at 0 stars. So I think fairly easy cost of acquisition there. You got Raven, who is available from the Meta Brawl store, as well as Mother Boxes. And then you have Batman, who's available from the Batman starter package, which is, for light spenders, fairly easy way to obtain Batman, and you actually get his stars at a pretty good discount. But the engine for this team is definitely going to be your Nightwing. That's going to be where you want to put as many resources as possible. Obviously, he is a little bit further down in the bleed, so this is going to be kind of a secondary kind of like dream team that you're going to want to build later on. And it actually works out quite nice because that's going to give you some time to try to build up a couple of these Bat Family and Titans teammates so that you're ready whenever Nightwing comes to the bleed for you. But it's definitely one of those teams that you kind of want to be starting out with one of the other teams first, so that you can kind of build into this Titans Bat Family lineup. What I really like about this team is it pushes a lot of damage out. And the reason why is the 3 tag synergies that you're going to be getting. So if you weren't aware, the Titans tag is going to increase your crit damage. The Bat Family tag is going to increase your crit rate. And then obviously we talked about the Weapon Master tag, which is going to increase your attack. So getting all 3 of those in one place is really, really nice. You know, a lot of people are hit or miss on whether Batgirl is worth using. In my opinion, because this tag synergy team is now possible, I really don't see how Batgirl is going to be relevant in the meta, because you kind of get a lot of the benefits of her kit just by having all 3 of these tags at once. Okay, so we talked about what I think are kind of the 5 best tag synergy teams, but I also want to include my first hybrid tag synergy team. This is a team composition that myself and Tyvoka came up with quite a while ago, just kind of theory crafting even before global launch. But I think really the bread and butter of this game, the thing that you're going to see most often, and the way that you should think about building teams is by doing this. So you're not going to be getting the 5 tag synergy bonus too often doing it this way, but you can stack a bunch of 3 tag synergy bonuses, and I think that ends up being slightly better for a lot of game modes. In this case, what we're doing is we're kind of splicing Arkham's Most Wanted and Legion of Doom together. So you saw in the comp for Legion of Doom that Ivy is not giving you that Legion of Doom tag synergy, but she can give you the Arkham. And the nice thing about this tag, about this team, is that you have Scarecrow who can kind of meld everything together. So Scarecrow has the Legion of Doom and Arkham's Most Wanted tags. And that means that you just need 2 other Legion of Doom and 2 other Arkham's Most Wanted champions to make this work. There are a few other champions in the game that can do this for you. Champions like Hawkgirl, who can bridge the gap between like Birds of Prey and Justice League. You've got, as we see in the Titans team, champions like Nightwing and Robin, who can bridge the gap between Bat Family and Titans. We've got Wonder Woman, who bridges the gap between Justice League and Justice League Dark. So you'll start to see more of these types of team combinations become viable as we get a few more characters into the game. And we're getting really close to that point. This is kind of the first one that you'll see that I think is worth mentioning. But as we move along, as we do more of these tag synergy team builds, you're going to see me probably move to a lot of them that are more hybrid in nature like this. What makes this team so great is you're going to be getting the Legion of Doom bonus for several of your champions, and that's going to allow that energy generation for a couple of your win conditions. It's also going to give you plenty of effect accuracy through your Arkham's Most Wanted side, and then you're going to get that Weapon Master debuff for the increased attack. And one thing I've tried to do with this team comp is allow for a little bit of optionality for someone who's not a heavy spender. I've included Lex Luthor and Deathstroke here. The nice thing about them is they both get the Legion of Doom and Weapon Master tag synergy. So regardless of which one of those that you use to fill the squad out, you're still going to get the same tag synergy bonuses. Now that we've looked at all the tag synergy teams, let's see how one of those teams does in practice. Now this is a little bit of a variation. You can see that I have included Flash instead of Wonder Woman here. This is a boss that requires a lot of heavy AoE in order to get high scores. So we want to have Flash in to augment our Constantine. And that's something I mentioned to you at the beginning of the video. You know, you're not always going to use the specific team comp that's recommended. I do use just the full Justice League Dark in a lot of places. Training Simulator comes to mind. I also use full Justice League Dark in some of the ship-related combat, some of the strategy game modes. But in Combat Cycle, you're going to definitely be using a lot of variations on what you would typically use. You can see we're getting that Energy Wielder, which is going to help us with survivability, which is quite important in this game mode. Around the 1 minute mark, you will start losing champions typically. And so, you know, we're heavily relying on some of that defensive synergy from our Dr. Fate, as well as the healing capabilities of Raven. And we're going to be getting a lot of spiritual amp from using Zatanna as well as our Constantine. We're still getting the 4 tag bonus for spiritual amp here, which is definitely going to be helpful in amping up or ramping up Constantine's damage. You know, we're hitting the 44 million mark here. I've definitely done much better when I take it off of auto because I'm able to control things a little bit better. My healing is going to be a little bit less sporadic, and I'm able to kind of save some of these champions. But you know, I'm definitely not going to turn down being able to do 50 million plus damage with a Justice League Dark team. The last thing I'll point out in terms of team building, it's really important to pick a champion that's going to be kind of your primary win condition. Maybe you have a secondary. Some of these teams that I mentioned, you're going to have multiple win conditions on the same team. So if you like the hybrid Legion of Doom Arkham's Most Wanted team comp is going to have 3 win conditions on it. You got Joker, Deathstroke, and Sinestro. Like a team comp like this, Constantine is the clear win condition, and you're trying to augment his damage dealing ability and keep him alive. So we've got 2 champions that can keep him alive, 2 champions that are making him stronger, and then they all kind of work together with some of those Energy Wielder and Justice League Dark tag synergies. Well, that's going to do it for this first tag synergy video. I hope you enjoyed it. Definitely let me know down in the comments whether you've used one of these teams or if you have your own tag synergy team that you think should be included on the next time we do one of these lists. As always, if you enjoyed this video, I hope you'll consider liking it and also subscribing if you haven't already so that you can get notified anytime I have new DC Dark Legion videos in the future, and I will see you on the next video.